Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the Titans of Ool. Now, the Titans of Ool are one of the new factions brought in by the new expansion, The Prophecy of Kings, to Twilight Imperium. And they are, in my opinion, the most interesting of all the new factions. So I decided I wanted to do a deep dive on them. So, the Titans of Ool are a living machine race that were created or engineered by the Mayhacked Gene Sorcerers way back before they lost the galaxy to the Lazaks. So when they were losing and retreating, they put a bunch of them into hibernation to wait for their return. Now that they've returned, they woke them up, but the Titans of Ool, their programming has evolved during their time in hibernation, and they no longer need to obey the Mayhacked Gene Sorcerers, so they are going out and doing their own thing now. They have thrown off the yoke that the Mayhacked had on them and have become their own people. And they're spreading around the galaxy and waking up other members of their species that they are finding. And they have their own goals and agendas. So the Titans are living machines that never stop growing. So the truly ancient members of their race are absolutely titanic, hence Titans. The normal members of the race are more human-sized, but there are members of their race that they're finding that are literally the size of battleships. I mean, they're absolutely enormous, skyscraper tall. And there's a lot of cool thematic stuff in here where other units are actually meant to represent larger versions of the Titans. So let's start with what you get when you choose to play the Titans of Ool. So to begin with, of course, you start with their homeworld, which is Elysium. Elysium is a pretty decent homeworld. It has a very high resource value of 4 and a very low influence value of 1. But that high resource value actually makes it quite valuable. To start with, you start with a planet that can throw out 4 resources. So your first build action in the first round is not going to be bad at all. You're gonna manage to get some good units built with those 4 resources. So now your starting fleets for the Titans of Ool is a bit strange until you understand some of the differences with them, which I'm going to explain in a minute. So you start with 1 dreadnought, 2 cruisers, a space dock like everyone does, 2 fighters, and 3 ground troops. Now, the 3 ground troops, when generally speaking, out of these units, seems like the only one with carrying capacities. The dreadnought seems strange, especially since it can only carry 1, except that they have a special cruiser on their sheet. They have the Saturn engine. Now, the Saturn engine is cost 2, combat 7, movement 2, capacity 1. The main difference between it and a normal cruiser is that capacity 1, which usually you have to wait to get a cruiser 2 to get capacity 1 on your cruisers. They start with it with their basic cruisers. So because of that, with the 2 Saturn engine 1s as your cruisers and the 1 dreadnought, you can carry all 3 of those ground troops and immediately start colonizing in 3 separate planets. Now, these guys are not a top-tier colonizer with only 3 ground troops to start colonizing with, but they can do an interesting thing where they can spread out and colonize 3 one-planet systems, or, leave one of those ships in a 2-planet system for two rounds and fully colonize it, while the other ships move further towards the center of the galaxy, towards Mechatol Rex. So they are no slouches when it comes to colonization. Now, I already explained one of the main differences of their starting units is the Saturn Engine 1. I did it a little ahead of when I normally do it in these Grokking Twilight Imperium videos because it very much pertains to the starting fleet. So I figure why not do what the other of their 2 different starting units is, which is instead of a PDS, they get a Hell Titan 1. So a Hell Titan 1 is supposed to be one of the Titans of Ool that is quite old and is enormous. These are gigantic sized Titans that have a gun that can reach into space and basically act as a PDS / ground force on the planet they're on. So instead of acting like a normal PDS where it's just a structure, this is both a structure and a ground force, which is a Very interesting thing because they will qualify as either for certain card effects or objectives. Now, the Hell Titan 1, it counts as a structure and a ground force, cannot be transported. It gives a planetary shield like normal planetary defense systems, PDSs, do. It has a space cannon of 6. It has sustained damage for its use as a ground force. It has production of 1. This is amazing. You can produce units off of these PDSs. And it has a combat of 7. This is fantastic. It's a better ground troop mixed with a PDS. Really awesome. The Saturn Engine 1 and the Hell Titan 1 are both absolutely fantastic. So the next thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about the special abilities on the card of the Titans of Ul. They have 3: Terrigenesis, Awaken, and Coalescence. So Terrigenesis is after you explore a planet that does not have a sleeper token, you may place 1 or move 1 sleeper token to that planet. Now, you get a handful of these sleeper tokens. These are meant to represent sleeping gigantic Titans of Ul on particular planets that you're trying to rediscover and awaken that have been sleeping for thousands of years. So when you explore a planet, which is any planet that you, with the expansion, the way the exploration rules work is that any planet you go to colonize that you're not taking away from an enemy player, you can explore. So to start with, the first few systems you go out in, and you're going to get to send ships into 3 different systems if you want, you're going to be able to throw down 3 of these right away. Now, on its own, well, what does that do? What it does is what the next ability they have is. The next ability is Awaken. Awaken. After you activate a system that contains 1 or more of your sleeper tokens, you may replace each of those tokens with a PDS from your reinforcements. Now, this is amazing. So you go in, you activate them, you get the tokens. If you activate that system again in the future, now you get a free PDS on those planets. This can be fantastic because just leaving these tokens in places can be awesome because when you see an enemy coming, you can be like, okay, I need to do something there. I'm going to activate it. I'm going to move some ships in, and I get a free PDS. And your PDS also, again, counts as a souped-up ground force in addition to being a PDS, which is really pretty freaking cool. Now, the third ability is really just to give a clean answer to what happens where if you activate a system that you have left one of these tokens on that your opponent took over and put ground troops on that area, well, what do you do? What happens? So the third ability is Coalescence. If your Flagship or your Awaken faction ability places your units into a same space area or onto the same planet as another player's units, your units must participate in a combat during the space combat or ground combat steps. So that cleans it up and tells you what exactly would happen in those unusual situations where that might happen, because maybe you leave one of these on a planet and then your opponent takes that planet. How do you deal with that circumstance? Now, in regard to the Flagship, how that works into this, the Flagship for the Titans of Ul is the Oranos. Now, the Oranos is a 8-cost Flagship. It has 2 attacks with a 7, which makes it a fairly average combat Flagship. Still pretty good. It has the combat capabilities of 2 cruisers. That's not bad. It's got a movement of 1, pretty standard. Capacity of 3, pretty standard. Sustained damage, all that's, pretty standard for most Flagships, but it has an amazing deployability. Deploy. After you activate a system that contains 1 or more of your PDSs, you may replace one of those PDSs with this unit. So in other words, if you activate a system that you've already got a PDS in, you can get the Oranos out for free. This is normally an 8-cost ship. It's fairly powerful, and it's got 3 capacity, and you can get this out without spending any resources at all. Because you could have gotten... you could have also gotten those PDSs out through your abilities, and then through your abilities turn one of them into a Flagship. All of that can be done literally just based on your natural abilities, which is really, really cool. I like this idea a lot. The next thing I want to talk about is the Agent, Commander, Hero, and Mech. These are all really great. I don't know if you can tell, but I really like this faction. So the Agent ability, the Agent is Tellurian the Protector. When a hit is produced against a unit, you may exhaust this card to cancel that hit. So once per round, you may just ignore a single hit. So if someone does a card that causes a hit, or if there's a real key combat going on, you can ignore one hit. It's not the greatest agent ability in the game, but it is really decent and situationally can be amazing because it could turn a losing battle into a winning battle by saying, you know what? Yeah, no, that hit doesn't happen. And that's pretty great. Now the commander ability, the commander is Tungstantus, the Gardener, and his ability is unlocked when you have 5 structures on the game board. Now here's where the fact that those PDSs count as both ground troops and structures really comes into play. So you've got 6 possible PDSs. If you can get 5 of them out pretty quickly, you can get this card out and fast, and that's really great because his ability is also really great. So his ability is when one or more of your units use production, you may gain 1 trade good. Yeah, so you're going to have PDSs all over the place that each have a production of 1. Every time you activate a system with a PDS in it, you're going to be like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm going to spend 1 and throw out 2 ground troops. Or spend 1 and throw out a destroyer. Something cheap. You're just going to do a quick little single unit production. Or maybe if it's in a key spot, you might be like, you know what? I'm going to spend 4 and throw out a dreadnought. Maybe I want to throw something bigger out there. But every time you do it, you get a free trade good back for use in future purchases. Really awesome ability. You're going to want to get those structures out as quickly as possible. Keeping in mind that your space dock is also a structure. You can very quickly get enough structures out to unlock Tungstantus and get his ability. His ability is really cool. Now, the final ability for the hero here, the hero is Uhl the Protector, Elysium's Core, and of course now he is unlocked when you have scored 3 objectives, just like all hero abilities, and then he becomes Geoform Awakening. Now this is a very interesting hero ability. This is a very unique and different hero ability. The vast majority of hero abilities have this one giant effect and then are removed from the game. Theirs doesn't. They have a continuing effect that is really cool and helps you for the rest of the game. So you're going to want to get this guy out as quick as possible because the more of the game he's in effect, the more amazing he is. So here's what he does. Basically, FYI, storyline-wise, he is the oldest and largest of all of the Titans of Uhl. So once you get him woken up, as an action, you can ready Elysium, which of course is your main planet, and then attach this card to it. Its resource values and its influence value are both increased by 3, which that means you wind up with 7 resources and 4 influence on your homeworld, which once he's unlocked, that turns this into, I'm pretty sure, the best homeworld in the game. That's insane. And also, you gain a space cannon on that planet that has a space cannon 5 times 3 ability. So you roll 5 or better to hit, 3 shots. So you also gain what is probably the best space cannon in the game because, again, this is the largest, most powerful of all of the Titans of Uhl that wakes up on Elysium. Okay, so this is not a single awesome game-winning effect, but the quicker you can get this guy out, the more amazing he is. Having 7 resources on your homeworld, or possibly 4 influence, and having a super powerful space cannon to deter invasion fleets coming towards your homeworld is really, really awesome. And it's also awesome that the hero ability is something that is so different from everybody else's hero abilities. It's not something that's a one-off and goes away. It lasts the rest of the game. Very cool. So the next thing I want to talk about are the starting technologies. So the Titans of Uhl start with 2 technologies. They start with the Scanlink drone network and the anti-mass deflectors. So the Scanlink drone network is when you activate a system, you may explore one planet in that system that contains 1 or more of your units. So this allows you to explore planets that you already have taken control of. Normally you wouldn't be able to do that. So this is one way to get multiple of your PDSs on a single planet up near the front line close to the enemy territory, because you can get multiple tokens on them and then activate that system and turn them all into PDSs, which is a really cool thing to do. Now the other one, anti-mass deflectors, is your ships can move into and through asteroid fields And when other players' units use Space Cannon against your units, they get a -1 to their die result. So this is a pretty decent one. Getting to move through asteroid fields is nice, but also the -1 to enemy Space Cannon shots is really nice and characterful for a faction that has the best space cannons in the game. So it is a really cool starting one. Plus, of course, these give you lots of great, having 2 cards really helps work towards prerequisites of other cards in the game. So now there are a lot of techs that I would like to recommend for the Titans of Wool. Specifically, I definitely want to recommend their 2 unit upgrades, but also I want to recommend all the unit upgrades because you want to definitely get lots of units upgraded for the Titans of Wool. But what general techs do I recommend for them? There are quite a few, and I know you're not going to be able to get all of these out in one game, so you're going to have to pick and choose which ones are going to work for you, but all of these are going to be techs that work very well for the Titans of Wool. So to start with, the first tech I want to throw out there that I think is a no-brainer for me and is probably one that everybody should go for is the AI development algorithm. AI development algorithm. When you research a unit upgrade technology, you may exhaust this card to ignore any one prerequisite. When one or more of your units use production, you may exhaust this card to reduce the combined cost of the produced units by the number of unit upgrades you own. So both of their faction-specific attacks are unit upgrades. You're going to want unit upgrades. Lots of unit upgrades with this is going to be amazing. It's going to be an incredibly awesome thing. First off, it helps you get those unit upgrades because you get to ignore one of the prerequisites. That's really great because a lot of the unit upgrades have lots of prerequisites of different colors, and you may not have all of those because you may be ignoring some of the general technologies to preferably get lots of the unit upgrades out. But then in addition, whenever you use production, being able to reduce the cost of production by the number of unit upgrades you have out is going to be amazing in getting these giant fleets out on the board. Highly recommend AI development algorithm. Now, towards that same sort of effect, I'm also going to recommend Starwing Tools, because while AI development algorithm can work for one giant production, you do have to exhaust it to do it. And of course, Starwing Tools just, when one or more of your units use production, reduce the combined cost of the production of those units by 1. This can really help you with those lots of productions that you're going to be doing from all of your special PDSs, the Hell Titan ones, around the board to be able to get your free trade goods back from Tungstantis. So I do highly recommend Starwing Tools. These 2 are my biggest recommends. Now, I've got a few others I want to recommend. I know you're probably not going to get all of these out because other than these 2, you're going to focus a lot in probably on unit upgrades. But some of these could be really cool if you have the opportunity to get them, especially once you have enough resources and you can grab technology and you can get 2 techs at once. Maybe you get a unit upgrade and one of these. So plasma scoring is really cool. When one or more of your units use bombardment or space cannon, one of those units may roll an additional die. You're going to have space cannons everywhere. That can be amazing for all of those space cannons. The Magan Defense Grid is one where it says, you may exhaust this card at the start of a round of ground combat on a planet that contains one or more of your units that have a planetary shield. Your opponent cannot make rolls during this round of combat. Every planet that has one of those PDSs on it, and they're going to be all over the place, is going to have a planetary shield. This makes your first round of ground combat, when someone tries to invade you there, really one-sided, which is pretty awesome. The last one I want to throw out that I think is really great is the Graviton Laser System. You may exhaust this card before one or more of your units use Space Cannon. Hits produced by those units must be assigned to non-fighter ships, if able. So this really helps you to do damage to invading fleets, to their big ships before they attack you. Again, especially because this faction is going to be so PDS heavy. So many of those big space cannons everywhere, you're gonna want to upgrade them. Now, again, I threw a lot of techs out. You're not going to get all of those out in one game, but whichever ones you can get out, these might be really cool. They're going to be really fun to try to get some of these out. So the next thing I want to talk about is, in addition to the regular upgrades that you're going to want to get for lots of your different units, you have the 2 faction-specific unit upgrades that are going to be really awesome. They are, of course, the Saturn Engine 2 and the Hell Titan 2. So the Hell Titan 2 is, of course, the upgrade to the Hell Titan 1. It is your even more super PDS. So the unit, again, is treated as both a structure and a ground force. It cannot be transported. You may use this unit space cannon against ships that are adjacent to this unit system. So just like the normal PDS-2, you upgrade the range of your space cannon, which is really cool. Now, I should note that this has a prerequisite of 1 yellow and 1 red. You start with a yellow tech with your scanning drone network, and if you get that, like I said before, the AI development algorithm, which is a really good starting red tech, you already have the prerequisites to be able to get this, so it's not that difficult. Now, it has on the ground, it has a combat of 6, which is, I mean, that's equal to their faction's mechs. In addition, it has, of course, a planetary shield. The space cannon is upgraded to a space cannon 5. It has sustained damage as before and production as before. So it's upgraded in a handful of ways, and it is even more awesome than the Hell Titan 1. Really great. Now, the upgraded Saturn Engine 2 has the prerequisites of a green, yellow, and red. Again, you start only with a yellow of those, but again, if you get the red, then that red of the AI development algorithm can allow you to ignore the prerequisite for the green. So right after getting that red of the AI development algorithm, you can get the Saturn Engine 2 out. So the Saturn Engine 2 gets sustained damage, which is really awesome to have sustained damage on a cruiser, and it also ups the combat from a 7 to a 6, just like normal Cruiser 2 does. It ups the move from a 2 to a 3, again, like the normal Cruiser 2. And because it already started with a capacity of 1, it ups that to a capacity of 2, which is really, really awesome. So the next thing I want to talk about is the mech. We didn't get to talk about the mech when we were talking about all of the Agent Commander and hero abilities. So the mech is Hecatonchieris. It has 2 costs, combat 6, sustained damage, just like all the mechs, but it has a deploy ability. When you would place a PDS on a planet, you may place 1 mech and 1 infantry on that planet instead. So you can do a really cool thing if you're running out of PDSs, or if you have a planet that you put one of the tokens on and you don't want to put a PDS there. Instead, you can place a mech and a ground force there. It's another really great way to quickly get some units on a planet without actually having to pay their costs, and that is pretty awesome. It is definitely a really decent deployability. A lot of the deployabilities all work synergistically with each other. There's a lot of ways that they all combine, and that is really, really freaking awesome. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, I don't normally draw attention to this, but I want to talk about the unique promissory note for this faction, and it's because it is an awesome one, and you can probably get a lot for it. Now, the Titans of Wool only get 2 commodities, so generally they don't have a lot of trade goods commodities to trade to other factions, but this promissory note is amazing and could command a lot of funds, or maybe some other promissory notes back from the other faction. So when you give it to someone else, as an action, they can attach this card to a non-home system you control other than Mechatol Rex. Its resource and influence values are each increased by 1, and it is treated as having all 3 planet traits: cultural, hazardous, and industrial, which is really, really freaking cool. This is a great card to trade off to somebody else to increase their resources. You can definitely command a really decent trade for this promissory note, which is why I want to draw attention to it, because it's actually one of the best promissory notes I think I've ever seen. Okay, so now let's talk about the strategy cards. Which ones do I recommend? So to start with, I think you should do a lot of technology with these guys. Technology is going to be definitely a big part about upgrading the capabilities of the Titans of Wool until you can get out lots of your upgraded units, which are going to be even more awesome. So definitely technology is going to be a big one. But let's say someone else takes technology, or you're playing a 3-player game, you can get a second of the strategy cards. What are going to be some other ones you're going to want to go for early on? So another one I'm going to say is construction. And the reason is to get some of those PDSs out. If you can get a PDS out, first round, you might also then be able to very quickly get your flagship out without even paying for it early second round, and not in your home planet, so it's already further out into the galaxy, so that it can move out and immediately begin joining up with your other fleets and colonizing. And as it has a capacity of 3, if you can get some ground troops over there, you can send it out and immediately start colonizing multi-planet systems with Oranos, your flagship. So I do think construction is going to be a good one. All the other ones that are good for everybody else are generally good for the Titans of Wool as well. They can benefit from warfare, but not as well as a lot of other starting factions in the beginning of the game because of how they don't have multiple ground forces on a single ship. They're kind of spread out more, so they're not really going to go for warfare. They might go for Imperial when there gets to be some value tokens on there, so they can get some free trade goods and also get some extra secret objectives. Later on, of course, they're going to want Imperial for scoring lots of points and trade for, replenishing their commodities and doing some trades and getting some money and trading off terraform, of course. And then, of course, generally speaking, diplomacy when you want to keep people from attacking you, or leadership when you really want to go first next time and want to get yourself some extra tokens that you have already spent on doing a lot of moving out and colonizing. So generally speaking, there's a fair number of these that work fairly well for them. But to start with, I think construction and technology are going to be the big ones for early game for the Titans of Wool, depending on how your strategy is going. There are sometimes where you're going to want to do technology as your main one you're going for. And there's actually going to be sometimes you're going to want to do construction early on, depending on what secret objectives you get. And speaking of which, let's talk about what secret objectives I think are really good for the Titans of Wool, which ones would be great to start with or to find either using the primary or secondary ability of the Imperial card. So there are a ton. There are a ton of secret objectives that work really well for the Titans of Wool. I have grabbed a number of them here to go through. I'm going to run through them pretty quickly. So the first one I want to talk about is establish a perimeter. Have 4 PDS units on the game board. Yeah, this is going to happen pretty quickly, especially since you're going towards trying to get a lot of structures out to get Tungstanus out. You're going to do this. This is going to be one that works really well for the basic strategy of how to use the Titans of Wool. The next one I have is turn their fleets to dust. Use a space cannon to destroy the last of a player's ships in a system. Now, this is not going to be a gimme, but you're going to have a lot of PDSs around, and once you upgrade them to level 2, and they're able to shoot into adjacent systems, sometimes you're going to have enemy fleets accidentally move into choke points where they're able to be hit from multiple neighboring systems by tons of PDSs, and this may happen. So this is one that you're not going to get completed early, but you might get completed later just because of the nature of this faction. The next one is produce in mass. Have units with a combined production value of at least 8 in a single system. So now with this one, you start with a production value of 6 in your home system. And remember, each PDS can give you +1 production. So this is a reason, if you got this as one of your starting secret objectives, that you might want to go for construction right away, because you could very quickly throw a PDS down on Elysium and then later get another PDS, and that's 8. That on your home system, you could have 8 production in your home system and complete that secret objective. The next one is occupy the fringe. Have 9 or more ground forces on a planet that does not contain one of your space docks. So this is one that you're not going to be able to get quickly, but because of the fact that you can produce units with your PDSs and you can use them to start producing ground troops, and the PDS itself counts as a ground troop. Once you produce 8 ground troops on that planet, plus the PDS, that's 9. About mid-game, you could be able to get this out there, especially if you have 2 PDSs on one planet. It could also be really good if you were also going towards the produce in mass and you threw some PDSs down on your home system planet, because you have a huge amount of production on your home system. So you could throw out a ton of ground troops there. The next one is adapt new strategies. Own 2 faction technologies. You're going to want these unit upgrades. That's a given. So at some point you're going to achieve that if you get that goal. The next one is mechatize the military. Have 1 mech on each of 4 planets. So now you can get mechs out on planets very quickly because of the fact that the mechs can be deployed along with a ground force instead of PDSs via your abilities. Anytime you would make a PDS on a planet, you can instead put a mech and a ground force there. So you can put them out with construction, and you can put them out with your discovering of the tokens, and then later activating that system. So if you get that one, you can very easily do that with the Titans of Wool as well. And the final one I want to draw attention to is hoard raw materials. Control planets that have a combined resource value of at least 12. Now remember, Elysium starts with a resource value of 4, and if you get your hero ability unlocked, it goes all the way up to a 7 from a 7 to a 12 is only 5 more resources. Yeah, that would be a really easy one to get for the Titans of Wool. These guys are very versatile and actually work really well with a lot of the hidden objectives. So the Titans of Wool are very interesting. They have certain abilities that work very different from other factions. For instance, their ability for their hero, which becomes a constant ability that just thoroughly improves your home planet for the rest of the game rather than being a one-off ability. They also have some really cool abilities for getting to get out these free PDSs slash big ground forces that they have, and also can turn one of those into their flagship. They have a lot of ways to get units out without spending money, and then they have ways to get extra money. These guys are going to have huge fleets and huge numbers of fleets, and they are going to be militarily probably one of the most powerful factions in the game if you're playing with them, just because of sheer numbers of ships you're going to have out there because of all these tricks to get them out, either for reduced cost or for no cost in some cases. And these guys are going to be really awesome. And then on top of that, your area of space is going to be incredibly well defended with these super PDSs slash awesome ground forces that are going to really, really well defend key points that you need to defend in your area. And when you get the upgrade on Elysium, your home system is going to be incredibly well defended as well. I think the Titans of Wool seem like a really cool faction with a lot of versatility in their play style and a lot of interesting things that they can do. This is, of all of the factions in the new expansion, the Prophecy of Kings expansion, the Titans of Wool are the one that I am most emphatically interested in playing. I haven't gotten to try them out yet, and I can't wait to do so. They look freaking awesome. This is one that I definitely need to get to the table. Let me know if you think I missed anything in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And if you have a request for whichever faction you think I should cover next in my series of Grokking Twilight Imperium, feel free to comment down below. And until next time, game on. Hi, did you hear I was recording and you were like, I have to go interrupt? Daddy's recording. Gotta go interrupt. Is that what's going on here now? Is that what you're doing? Is that what you're doing? Yeah, you're being so silly. Yeah, what's going on? What's going on? What is it? What you looking at? What you looking at? What you doing, you crazy? Hey, it's all good. Why don't you go upstairs? I'll be up when I'm done recording and I'll play with you, okay? 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 Go ahead. Go play with your toys.